Have you ever read through someone else's diary? Because I'm going to read through my own for you. This is Walking Down Memory Lane. Welcome back to just chill vibes and no sudden movements. I am recording on a Monday. This is a continuation of Wednesday's episode, which was recorded on Monday because this week is going to be crazy. And I just want to keep up to date with my YouTube schedule, and since this is not extremely taxing and it's not too difficult to do, I do want to do it for you guys and for me, because I'm having a really good time looking through my memories with the approach of my impending 25th birthday on the 6th of February. There's always going to be a cough in one of my videos that I don't edit out. I think that's just a staple. At some point I'm just going to have to come up with some cough merch. But we're going to continue reading through my diary, and currently we are reading it backwards. So we started with some early 2016 diary entries, and now we are in late 2015 diary entries. So this is December 31st, 2015. And because it was the last day of that year, I decided to do a recap of that year. So the first point is remarriage. My father remarried in a rush. The woman was, by my reckoning? Why did I talk like The woman was, by my reckoning, decent, but my father, being himself, had found some fault in her and the marriage did not last. 2. Divorce. The marriage lasted about 3 weeks before the two were divorced. I remember how my father treated her. It is scarcely something I can forget. 3. Attempted suicide. The woman attempted suicide. I was witness to it. She didn't die, but she done well got close. 4. I forgot about this. This is okay. This is like really heavy. Sorry, it's what's in my diary. For open heart surgery, Musa, who is my second youngest sibling, had open heart surgery, and I stayed in the hospital with him. And while I experienced what is still to this day the most traumatic day of my life, the hospital and living there for about a fortnight was liberating. I remember that. I don't know how much detail people want me to talk about any of this stuff. I don't know if anyone wants me to talk about this stuff, but I'm going to. My brother was born with a genetic syndrome. It's called Ellis Van Creveld syndrome, and it essentially means that he was born with a small hole in his heart, which caused a lot of other things. Like he had 6 fingers on both of his hands. He had, on one foot he had 6 toes, on the other he had 5. He would have also been born with a cleft palate, but in his instance he wasn't. He was also extremely tiny. He had a lot of eating problems, and after my mother passed away, he was only about 1 or about 11 months, and I took almost full responsibility taking care of him. No, he wasn't 11 months. He was definitely a year old. My youngest brother was 11 months. But I took full responsibility in taking care of him. I would make his food, I would change his diapers, I would put him to sleep, I would do everything for most of my siblings, because my father was a useless slob. And I have no qualms about saying that. He really was. He would sleep 6 hours of the day. He would wake up, he would tell the kids to shut the fuck up, and he would just watch TV. Like, that was his livelihood. Every now and then he would cook, and then that food would go off because he refused to cook for the rest of the week, and he wouldn't buy more food. It was a terrible way to live, and I'm so glad I'm not there anymore. But I took care of my brother, and because he had this hole in his heart, the doctors recommended that he have open heart surgery to repair the hole that's there, and it would, help him as he grew up. If he didn't have this surgery, it would significantly cut his lifespan. It would affect his growth. It would affect his everything, because, the heart is... I'm not a doctor, but it's a pretty important organ. So he had this surgery, and it really was one of the most harrowing experiences I've been through, where my brother, who I considered my own child because I'd raised him since he was a baby, seeing my brother go through that, where he was swollen and I didn't know if he was going to make it, if he was going to live. And obviously he was in the hands of professionals. Like, it wasn't completely irrational, but it was, to the level that I was going over it in my brain, it was extremely irrational. And I was with him in the hospital for 2 weeks. I remember, I don't want to cry in this video, just prefacing, but I may do, because it really is one of the most traumatic things I've been through. There was one night where there was like monitors around him, and one of them just started fritzing and started beeping. I don't exactly remember what monitor it was. And I immediately started panicking. I heard the noises, and a doctor came by, they checked it, and they called more and more doctors into this room. More and more doctors and nurses started piling into this room, and my brother was screaming. He was screaming out of pain, out of confusion, out of fear. He was a little baby. He was 2 or 3 years old when this happened. And I held it together for the longest time, where I was just holding him and trying to soothe him while the doctors like rearranged all the IVs and all the different tubes that were going into his body. And I think after, I want to say like the 20-minute mark, I just broke. Like, I just started bawling. Because I was scared that he was going to die. My eyes are going to burn because there's mascara on my eyelashes, and I don't want to cry. Oh, great. My eyes are burning. I don't want to cry. It's not... Fucking hell. But anyways, it broke me. I was crying with him, like I didn't know what to do anymore. And at this point, I must have been like 18, maybe 19. I can't exactly remember. I couldn't have been 18 in 2015. I don't know. Like I said, my whole life is a blur. But it was in 2015 when it happened. And I'm never going to forget seeing his tiny little body like swollen from the fluid. Like, he has a scar in the middle of his chest, like that goes down all the way to like the bottom of his ribs, because he was a baby. They needed to like completely open him up to perform this surgery, and it did actually fix a lot of problems that he was having. And I've heard from my sources that he's doing quite well now. But it was something that truly terrified me at the time, because I didn't know what was going on, and I thought he was going to die. Like, literally, I thought, this is the end. This is my brother's going to die, and I'm going to watch him die. Like, and I'd also lost my mother recently, so it was something that I was really fearful of. But in those 2 weeks, in complete contrast, it was the 2 weeks that I was not at home, I was not around my father, and I felt like I had room to move and room to breathe, because people kind of let me do my thing with my brother and weren't constantly looking over my shoulders, constantly watching me over what I was doing and how I was being. So there was also this sense of liberation that's just very confusing, because it was such a scary time for me. Anyways, moving on. The next point, which is the 5th point, is social worker. I don't want to say her name. She came soon after the news of the attempted suicide proposal. So this isn't Derek. This is a guy that my family really wanted me to marry, which, surprisingly, a lot of the things that correlate with Derek correlate with this guy. Like, on paper, they were very similar, except for the drinking, because the guy who proposed and the guy that my family wanted me to marry was a Muslim. And he said, I've said that I've described him as a layabout graphic designer that never wanted to leave his mother's house or plan a future for that matter. Now, I'm not trying to be shady or salty, but Alicia, you know Derek quite well because you're my best friend. Now, you tell me how, I mean, on paper, they seem like the same person. I really know how to choose them, I swear to God. So the next point, the seventh point, is Derek. I've written, he's relevant. He loves me, though I don't understand it. He's 31 at the moment, lives in Florida, Orlando. So I must have been 20 at this time. Lives in Florida, Orlando, or Lakeland, depending. He's sweet, albeit dependent, and something of an alcoholic. He's an alcoholic, bitch. Like, what? Who are you trying to fool? He accepts me for what I am, and for that I too love him. The distance is a killer, though. So 8 is a crisis in faith. This is where it was all falling apart, wasn't it? I refuse to believe that there is a kingdom of heaven waiting for me. So at this point, I was still quote-unquote religious, but I thought I was doomed. Like, I thought I was just going to burn in hell. So I was still doing my prayers, I was still saying my prayers, but I'd lost hope of ever achieving paradise because I'd committed the cardinal sin of disobeying my father and going against my father and disrupting my family, even though it was completely and utterly the right thing to do. So I was still a believer, and I was a believer until about 2017. But at this point, I'd stopped believing that I would make it to paradise after I died, which is a really sad thing to think about yourself. It's really not fun. So the next thing is theft. £200 stolen by one of my brothers. I'm not going to say his name. After he got a full-time fucking job. Yeah, that was all of my money. That was he's £200 is not a lot of money, but at the time, because it was all I had in money, it was a lot of money, and he took it all, and it really hurt me because I told my entire family. Because I could not accept that my brother, whom I was doing everything for, I was doing everything for everybody. Like, maybe I wasn't doing a perfect job at it because I was a young woman who had lost her mother, wasn't allowed to grieve for her, and just had to get up and go. And that's very much still my attitude. Even though grieving is something I address much, much quicker now because I understand how terrible it can get after enough time has passed. I couldn't believe he would do that to me. I couldn't believe it I'm so surprised when people betray me because I honestly truly do my best to do my best. That's it. And I couldn't believe it, and I told my father, I told my uncles, I told my aunts, and nobody did anything. I didn't ever see that money back. I haven't even received an apology, really. I remember my brother gave me like a pack of Pringles as an apology, and I ate the whole damn thing and told him that it just wasn't enough. Like, I'm not gonna. And that's kind of how I've always been. Like, if you give me something as an apology and you don't tell me that you've apologized, I'll take it. I'll take it, and I won't accept your apology, and I'll make it very clear to you that your apology is not accepted. My father would used to do things like that when he used to wrong myself or one of my other siblings. He would just apologize with food and never actually apologize and acknowledge what he did was wrong. And it was a poor habit that my brother picked up, and he picked up a lot of poor habits from my dad, and I'm just off on one now. I'm gonna move on. So the next thing is physical violence. What does that say? On occasions by my father, the final being the most severe, and the final attempt is what led me to leaving my house. The next point is last straw. I emailed the police and I left home. The next point is mental health issues. They're becoming increasingly worse. The next point is not belonging. I spent 4 months in my maternal uncle's house after I left my grandma's place, and I'm currently living in my paternal uncle's house. It's ongoing. Miscellaneous is, and I just listed a bunch of people that I really wanted to thank because they were the only people who had my back, and they were all online. I didn't know any of them except one of them in person. She was a school friend, but I hadn't seen her since school, so I was still only interacting with her like through WhatsApp or Facebook or online, and I really appreciated those people. The next entry, or the entry before that rather, is also from the 31st of December. So it was the last day of 2015. And this is what it says. Why did I talk like this? It's so embarrassing. It's been quite some time, old friend. The old friend being my diary. Far too much has happened this year for me to want to recount it, so I wish to only discover the matters at hand. I have yet to find somewhere I belong. Perhaps I could grow to belong here in time, and yet there is a lingering doubt in my mind that I will, and I seem to be wholly disinclined to be married. However, there is no denying that my options are extremely scarce at this point. To marry or to seek independence. Both seem hazardously daunting tasks. This is how you know I didn't have a job. For there is no denying that I am a changed person over the last year. What to do. I will have to consider my options carefully. My GP has agreed that I require counselling and so intends to send me to a specialist. Perhaps the specialist can help me see what I'm missing. Perhaps. There has also been a very interesting proposition. I really don't want to read this sentence because it's really embarrassing. Derek has offered to swindle me to America through his parents' need to spend in Christian charity. I forgot that Derek's parents were like really Christian. I don't suppose I've told you about Derek, or anyone for that matter. It really has been a long time and a lot has changed. I only wish there was some way to explain everything. Perhaps I will recap the past year, which we just did. Might help me see through some things. See what I've missed. There are as many lovely people in the world as there are awful. The former is simply harder to reach sometimes. Anyway, I feel more secure, which could be folly, but regardless. Therefore, I refuse to use aliases and letters in the place of names of real people from this point forth. Honesty over all virtues is the best policy. I think, okay, as ridiculous as that diary entry is, I do think that that's where this whole honesty mantra started, because I didn't want to live inauthentically from that point. And this was at the end of 2015. It was, I had found a new place to be. This was with one of my uncles, and I lived with him for 2 years before moving here. And yeah, I think that this is where the honesty stemmed from. Obviously, it didn't take immediately because I was definitely lying still a lot to my family, especially when it came to Derek and him swindling me to America, which I can't even believe that I wrote that sentence and now I've just read it to the general public. But I do think that the end of 2015, the year that I left my father's house and had a taste of freedom, well, it wasn't complete, it was a taste. I wanted to live authentically, and I no longer wanted to hide who I was, and I no longer wanted to care what other people thought of me, no matter who they were to me, like whether they were family, whether they were friends. It was very much a case of me being like, I'm gonna do what I want to do, regardless of what you think. And I have not regretted that in the slightest. And if there's anything you want to take away from me, yes, I've made mistakes on my path to whatever this is. I've definitely made mistakes, and there are definitely things that I could have done better, but hindsight is 2020. Ultimately, it's a fallacy, to look in the past and think that you could have done something better, when I truly believe that most people do the best possible thing that they could do at that time. And I think that I did the best possible thing that I could do with the cards that were dealt to me at the time previous, And if there's anything you can take away from my story, is that there's nothing more liberating than living with authenticity, with honesty, without caring what strangers or close loved ones truly think of you if you are simply being yourself. And the people who are real, no matter what their interests are, no matter what kind of people they are, if they really love you, they aren't going to discard you and throw you away and think less of you simply because you're exploring yourself. They're not going to, because I don't believe that love is that fickle. And I think that really helped me get rid of all the toxic people in my life. Derek turned out to be one of those people. I always felt like I just couldn't be upfront with him anymore. When at the beginning, I definitely felt that way. But as the years dragged on, that just stopped being the case. I couldn't be myself. I would be nervous talking to him. And what is the point? What is the point? Like, in terms of Derek, he was meant to be my closest confidant. He was meant to be my life partner in a sense, because I was going to marry him. And I just couldn't express simple things to him. And at the end of it, he broke up with me because I got a tattoo. And honestly, why do I need a person like that? Why does anyone need a person like that? Nobody needs a person like that. So I mean, this isn't the end, because I do want to read one more diary entry, and I don't know what it's about. I haven't even looked. It might be even more embarrassing than what I just did. Oh, it's from 2014. It may be more interesting than, oh, it's sad. But I just want to say that living with authenticity is 100% worth it, and the only thing I regret about it is that I didn't do it sooner, and I didn't realize it sooner. And I'm really glad that I have realized it, and I am living this way. But anyway, we're going to do one more entry, and then we're going to bookmark this and come back to it another time. So this is from the 31st of July in 2014. So this was over a year before my last few entries. I've packed up all of Mum's stuff. So this was, my mother passed away in December of 2013, and her stuff was just in the house for quite a while, up until July of 2014, and this was the 31st, so it was the very last day of July. I feel like this is a theme. I've packed up all of Mum's stuff. About time too. The woman's been dead for 7 months, for God's sake. All there is to do now is chuck all of it out. That woman who always treated me like a last priority. They can think the old cow was as perfect as they like, but they were all evil to her. Not me. I was a good kid. The only thing she had on me was the only thing she could complain about, that I hid away in my room so much, when typically her son does exactly the same thing. But is he in the wrong? No. I never backchatted, never backbit, even let her win all the time. She was wrong. Never complained when she didn't give me what I needed, never complained in general after realizing there wasn't a fucking point. How cruel is it then that I have to deal with exactly what she did and enjoy none of the perks? My sister is a bitchy cunt. My brother is a bleeding sulk who stole my money. My other sister is becoming a bitchy cunt. And Musa is a whinging accident. Dad, he's become a mum except for the fact that he's not dead. I'm sick of all of them, each and every one of them. They want me to quit pretending. Let's see how that works out for them. Wow. I don't even know if I meant any of that. I feel like in the moment, I can't remember the exact thing that happened that caused me to write this. I think this probably followed... Well, first of all, I was packing up my deceased mother's things. And I think that had a big effect on it. And I think for a long time, I had it in my brain that my mother didn't love me. And I still don't know if she did. I genuinely, I don't know. But I had it in my brain as a certainty that she didn't love me. And so I think that manifests throughout this diary. And the reason why I chose to continue reading that, even though it's really uncomfortable too, because it's me talking about my mother who's passed away, my father who's a terrible human being, and my siblings who weren't my siblings, and they had their terrible moments. And it's really uncomfortable, but I also feel like I need to go over it and I need to reconcile it. And maybe dealing with it publicly is not the best idea, but I don't know. Doing this, and I don't want to make this a thing, but doing this, making YouTube videos and talking about myself has really helped me figure things out that I normally wouldn't figure out just by myself. And that's not necessarily because people comment and leave me things to think about. It's just that because I know this is public and I don't really care how it paints me. It makes me think of how I would view this as a third party and what I would think about it. And, you know, would I view myself as this, like, piteous, like, terrible, tragic human being who went through a terrible experience? Do I see this as a horrible human being who betrayed her family? Do I see this as an angsty young woman who went through a lot of struggles and came out on the other side? How do I see it, you know? How do people see it? And I don't know, it just allows me to see a whole new perspective on it. And even if this is a terrible idea, I don't feel like it is. And I'm pretty good at sniffing out bad ideas. My track record for boyfriends is just broken. But in terms of everything else, in terms of gut feelings and knowing how to handle the way that I go through things, I'm pretty good at doing that, I think, anyway. I may make an apology video 10 years from now and just being like, I'm so sorry that I exposed the internet to this. But as of here and now, I really think I need to do this. And I look, if it's making you feel uncomfortable, please just feel free to tune out, and you don't need to continue with this, because the rest of this diary is just diary entries, and I want to read them. Unless they are too personal, I want to continue reading them. But I think I'm going to end off here. I'm not going to chill at the end of this video because I feel like this video was too, you know, it was too much of an emotional roller coaster. But the next video I will be posting will be for No Hijab Day. Please do join in if you feel so inclined. And I will see you Saturday for my No Hijab Day video. And yeah, I'll see you then. Have a good weekend, have a good week, and see you in the next video. Goodbye.